Hey, how you doing? Brian Kane, your golf mental performance mastery coach here, and I'm thrilled to have been invited to be a guest on Sirius XM Radio, PGA Tour Radio, Golf U, with Stanford men's golf coach Conrad and Kyle Gentry. Now, in this episode, we break down all things mental game of golf, from pre-shot routines and post-shot routines to visualization and preparing for majors or your local club championship. We go into what separates great and elite golfers with the 6 inches between the ears. And look, it's the 6 inches between the ears that control the 6 feet below. There's swing management, there's course management, and there's self-management, the most underdeveloped, under-taught aspect of golf. And I'm excited to talk about the mental aspects of golf with Conrad and Kyle. I also wanted to let you know that if you head to briancane.com/golf or go to briancane.com and click on free courses, you can find my free golf mental performance masterclass, where in a 40-minute video, I walk you through exactly what you want to do as a golfer or as a golf coach to develop the mental performance mastery skills you need to score low, compete at the highest level, and give yourself the best chance for success. Enjoy this episode from Golf U on PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM, and head over to briancane.com/golf to pick up my free masterclass. Dominate the day.
Well, welcome back to Golf U, talking all things college golf, pro golf, any type of golf on the radio. Coach Conrad and Kyle Gentry coming at you from Stanford University on this beautiful Monday night. We're excited about our next guest, Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a guy that is the foremost authority, if you ask a lot of people, and we're going to learn about his authority in the mental game. You know, we talk about elite players all the time on the PGA Tour and in the college ranks, and this guy works with a bunch of those athletes, but he talks a lot about elite performance. Brian Kane joining us tonight. Brian, thank you for coming on the program.
Conrad, Kyle, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here. Let's do this.
Well, we appreciate you carving out some time for us, Brian. And as I said in the lead-in, we spend every week talking about the top performers in really all levels of golf. And in your work, you often delineate between great performers and elite performers. Why don't we dive into that? Could you tell us a little bit about what you think about when you see and try and analyze and figure out and help people separate themselves from being great to elite?
Yeah, if you think about there being a gap, right? There's a gap between great and elite, or a gap between how I'm performing and how I'm capable of performing. And to me, the biggest difference between great and elite can be summed up in one word: consistency. You know, anyone can go out and score low and have a great weekend, the weekend of their life, but then you never hear from them again. They're like the Milli Vanilli of golf, right? The one-hit wonder. But what we want to have is we want to have that layer of consistency. We want to be the guy who wins forever, to take a term from Pete Carroll, the football coach of the Seattle Seahawks. And I think when you get into consistency, golf is the greatest game of consistency that there is. I mean, there's no more sport where routine becomes critical, where the 6 inches between your ears become critical, than when you're out there playing golf.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, I think that's one of the things that we see all the time when we try and recruit, at the college level is who's displaying those factors, as a high school player and as they move into the next level. I'm curious, are there anything, that in your teaching, Brian, that you can hang your hat on? Some of those key pillars that you find those elite players really building over time. Maybe you could dive into that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I think, when you look at the first aspect of elite performance, and it ties right back to Stanford University and a professor named Carol Dweck and all of her research on growth versus fixed mindset, right? And to simplify it, is growth mindset is I can be, have, and do anything I want with enough time and enough training. So if I'm trained at an elite level, and if I learn how to think and play at an elite level with my, swing management, course management, and self-management, I can work to get elite results. But a lot of it is that our success is a byproduct of our training. And we know we've got some big events coming up with the Masters and, other great golf events that we get to watch every weekend. And one of the things is nobody rises to the occasion, right? They sink to their training if they're elite and they're consistent. And I think when we're looking at elite performance, everyone always talks about, raising the roof and raising the high end. And there's two ways to get better. One is either you lower your score, or on your bad days are not as bad. Right. And I think that's one of the lessons and pillars I try to teach for elite level golf performance is when you're not playing your best, Can you have what I call a good, bad day, right? Can you not go as high as maybe you normally would? And, when we're looking at training mental performance in the concept of a growth mindset, I think a lot of times athletes, golfers especially, will say, well, I either have it that day mentally or I don't. I either have it mentally or I don't. And what they fail to realize is that mental skills can be trained just like the physical skills of golf. And if you look in golf, or in a lot of my work in baseball or MMA fighting or football or any sport, in the last 2 decades of doing this, we've come across what I call the 10 pillars of mental performance mastery, basically 10 skills that elite performers, whether it's a George St. Pierre, a UFC champion, or a Jordan Spieth on the PGA Tour, here's the 10 skills that they have. And it's an elite mindset, high levels of motivation and commitment, focus and awareness, self-control and discipline, the ability to keep the process bigger than the outcome, the ability to use meditation and mental imagery to be in control of themselves and be where their feet are, time management and organization, routines and habits of excellence. And then when we're looking at college golf, it's leadership in the right culture. And I think those are the 10 skills we're looking to try to develop to create that mental toughness skill set that we all need to become elite.
So this is super interesting. So let's dive into then like a particular example. You mentioned Jordan Spieth, so that's I'll fall into that one. Let's take Jordan and let's take some of these. So I think one of the things you're just describing is not just about, well, I guess maybe you are. I hear you when you say preparing and practice and training, and I think a lot of people think of training as being a something that's measured by effort. How hard do I train? Do I train a certain number of hours? Like who's training the most? But I don't think that's actually what you're saying. I'm assuming that there is a right way to train and a wrong way to train, because I'm sure Jordan wants to get back into the elite level status. He clearly has, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 of the things you've just described, and yet he's still kind of struggling. I guess, would you start in analyzing him? Would you start in kind of how he's training?
Well, I mean, what I would do is I would look at the three, what I call we review those 3 aspects of golf: course management, swing management, and self-management. And I think when you get to the elite levels of golf, anybody who's on the PGA Tour, anyone who's playing, in Korn Ferry, they've got the swing management skills or they wouldn't have made it that far. If you're playing at Stanford, they've got that piece. Course management, they may have gotten to college golf without the course management piece, and that's the biggest difference maker for when they get there. But on the tour, if they're still there, they've probably got swing management and course management down. But the self-management piece, when you start putting in the pressure of a Masters, I saw a stat that when you played in Tiger Woods' group on the PGA Tour, you were like a stroke worse than you were if you didn't play in his group, right? Why is that? It's because a lot of times they start playing against the people in their group instead of playing against themselves and playing against the course.
Brian, I need to stop you there. Yeah, I need to stop you there because now it explains why Tiger used to beat me by 5 or 10 shots. He is psyching me out. It wasn't the swing piece or the fact that he was making 6 or 8 birdies around. It was just the mental side. Thank you for solving that. I've been struggling with that my whole career.
Well, it's who are you competing with, right? And if I'm going out there to try to beat the field, that's the wrong focus. I need to go out there and perform my best one shot at a time and compete with myself in the course, because what am I going to do? Step up because someone else is playing better in my group? If I can step up, well, why didn't I step up from the first tee shot, in the first hole of the tournament? Like the step up happens every single day in your training. And I think that's what I would come back to is when we look at the elite levels of golf, what is the mental training that you're doing? And I heard Rory McIlroy say this after, he got interviewed after playing in the Northern Trust event. And he said, recently I've been letting my golf influence my attitude, influence my mindset. And he said, I can't do that. He said, when I'm playing my best, my attitude always influences my golf. And I think if we come back to one overlying principle in all of this, it's control what you can control. You can't always control how you're hitting it. You can't control the conditions of the wind. You can't control getting bad breaks, but you can control how you respond to those events. And you can control the attitude and the mental game with the right training. And I think if you have that piece, that's going to give you that best chance for success. But I would always come back to what's the competition? Are you trying to make up for not playing well? Are you trying to beat someone else in the field? Or are you trying to truly go out there, be where your feet are, and compete one shot at a time? That's what's going to give you the best chance for success and scoring low.
Well, Brian, thanks for joining us again. We've got Brian Kane. If you're curious about Brian's work, please find him at briankane.com. Excited to have him on Golf U tonight. Brian, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I've loved getting to know you and seeing you work with athletes and your approach. I really appreciate that you don't just tell people how to think, you give them tools on how to get there, right? How to get in the right frame of mind. And I wanted to ask you a little bit of a shift in gears. I know we're talking golf right now, but I love your piece that you've put out about shadow bullpen. You even talked about, some of the guys in the World Series looking at that. And I think about how just the physical act can get you in the right mental state. But talk to the listeners about some of the stuff you've done in baseball and how that might apply to golf with kind of your process of the shadow bullpen.
Sure. I mean, if you go to my Twitter, Instagram page, right, at Brian Kane Pete, you will see video of Clayton Kershaw, pitcher for the Dodgers, World Series champion with the Dodgers, from this postseason in 2020 and all the way back into 2016, where he's doing, Conrad, what you said, a shadow bullpen, where he's throwing a bullpen with no ball. And you might look at that and go, why? Well, here's why. Here's 5 things I'm working on when I do shadow bullpen, all of which are important in pitching, all of which are important in golf, right? Pitching is one pitch at a time. Golf is one shot at a time. The routines and the process and the skills are about as close as you can get. Maybe throw bowling in there. And those are the 3 I look at that are so similar. So the 5 things I'm working on in shadow bullpens: my body language. And, as a golfer, I remember going to the Waste Management this past February and distinctly noticing the difference in body language from Bryson and Ricky Fowler. And the way that they carried themselves, that edge, that body language, that confidence, their eyes never dipping below the horizon is something that Rory talks about as well, and how your body language changes who you are, right? So they're practicing body language. The second thing they're practicing is their tempo, how they move, and the tempo of the swing or the tempo of the pitch and how I move when I'm on the mound. The third thing is the visualization, seeing it. And everything happens twice, right? First in your mind, then in reality. So just like a golfer stands behind and sees the shot that they want to hit or sees the line of the putt, a pitcher is seeing the ball go where they want to throw it. I'm seeing a ball go on underneath the hitter's hands, or I'm seeing it outside at the catcher's knee. They see it before they throw it, but they practice that, right? And here's the message I would have the golfers or the golf coaches listening to this take away is you have to practice your process. If you want to get a better process, you have to practice it. And the reason why we take the ball away from the golfer or from the pitcher is when we take the ball away, what do? We take away the outcome. And when we take away the outcome, they have to get in the process. So they're practicing body language, tempo, visualization. And when I say visualization, it's not just seeing it. It's feeling what it would feel like. It's hearing what it would sound like. It's feeling the ball come out of your hand, right? It's kind of making it, using as many senses as you can, seeing it, feeling it, hearing it. And then we get into their pre-shot routine. And then we also get into them practicing the adversity, right? And this is one of the biggest gaps I see in golf coaching from a mental performance standpoint is everyone talks about the pre-shot routine or the think box and the play box and when you're over the ball, but no one talks about how do you handle if you don't hit it well? How do you let go of that shot, or how do you flush it and be able to get clear for the next one? And something you'll see guys do on tour, and whether they know they're doing it or not, and whether they've associated this with a release or flushing the last shot, is after you see a guy hit one, he doesn't like the outcome, they will walk carrying their club. And then they will give the club to their caddy, right? Allie McDonald, who just won her first LPGA event, I had her at Mississippi State. And the release that she developed there, that she still does, is she will take off her glove. And if she doesn't like the way she hit it, she will just literally slap herself in the leg with it, put it in the pocket. And that slap is an association of, I'm letting go of that last shot. What you'll see Clayton Kershaw do, take off the glove, rub up the ball. You'll see hitters put the bat under their arm, unstrap their batting gloves. You'll see Russell Wilson literally clap his hands, touch himself on the helmet, and take a deep breath. The key is these elite athletes know it's not going to be perfect, and they're not so bad that it has to be perfect for them to win. They know it's going to get hard because the competition is good too. They've got something to go to get them back into the present moment and back onto that next shot or next pitch.
So, Brian, when we got to come to break, but when we come back, I'd love to get a sense. I'm assuming that this mental, kind of the mental mastery, that takes time. It's a lot of effort. There's obviously a bunch of different levels from elite to just beginner, but I suspect that there are some base level things that you could teach us all to do around the idea of kind of pre-shot, around the idea of post-shot, handling nerves as we come on the golf course. So if you're willing to stick around, we'd love to have you in the next break. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. Fire
awesome. Up. Perfect. You're listening to Golf View here on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Golf View, covering all things college and amateur golf. I'm Kyle Gentry. Sitting across from me is the head men's golf coach at Stanford University. And we've been talking with the elite mental performance coach, Brian Kane, sticking with us in this next segment. Brian, we finished last segment, and we talked about the concept of a shadow bullpen, this preparation and this elite level training that again, elite athletes are going through to not only prepare for their performances, especially for golf, preparing for shots, having the pre-shot routine, but just as importantly, having a plan after the play happens, whether it be a good result or a bad result, so they can quickly move on and not have that linger to the next result or the next swing or the next shot or the next snap, whatever the case may be. So, Brian, you talked about this concept of a shadow bullpen. Can you describe to me, like, how would that be applied in golf? What would be the concept of a shadow bullpen in golf?
For sure. Just like Baker Mayfield, when he transferred from Texas Tech to Oklahoma and had to sit out a year, he would sneak into Oklahoma Stadium on a Friday night and literally take the playbook and run through the plays like he was playing the game the next day. You've heard Drew Brees, Peyton Manning do the same thing. The Blue Angels, I go back to the Navy's fighter pilots that do this aerial show. And when they prepare for the aerial show, they have photographs of what they're flying over, and they will have the boss who's giving them the commands in the planes of what maneuvers that they're doing. They'll talk them through over the aerial, so they're getting mental reps before they fly the show. They fly it in their mind in the squad room before they go out. So how do we take this concept of mental reps, shadow bullpens, and doing the event in our mind before it happens? How do we take that to golf? Well, for example, if you were playing the Masters and you had never played there before, you get the course map of Augusta. And leading up to that event, every night before you go to bed, I would say take 30 minutes, maybe not even that long, maybe take 18 minutes, right? And go through and look at the yardage book, whether you get it from Decade and Scott Fawcett, or it's one that you've created, or you've got it off of Google Earth. Maybe you're doing the 3D camera, the drone view of each hole, which is you can find now, especially for the major events, and go through and visualize, how would I want to play this hole? And play it in your mind, where literally you go, okay, here's what it looks like from the tee. Here's my target. Here's what I'm going after. And then they would close their eyes and they would sit and they would visualize the shot. They can also get up and they can go through and they can take the swing that they would want to hit that shot if they wanted to make it a little bit more active. And I think you do that at night as part of your shutdown PM routine leading into a tournament, and you even do it during the tournament. When you're in the tournament, you would go back and replay the day, and the shots that you hit really well, you would replay them, see, feel, and hear that shot that you hit. If you didn't hit a ball the way you want to, you would recorrect it at that point and see yourself playing the way you want to play. The other thing you can do in terms of preparation for that event, and let's take maybe the high school golfer or the college golfer that's listening to this, and they don't have the exact aerial footage that you'd get if you were playing in a major on the PGA Tour, is they can get the yardage book, go to the range. And I'll do this when I go to the range with players, and I'll say, okay, here's the first hole. How do we want to approach this? And you go, okay, I'm going to hit a 3-iron off the tee, and then I'm going to go in and hit a 7, and then I'm going to putt and get out of there. And they would say, okay, well, let's hit that 3-iron, and now let's hit the 7. And when they're standing at the range, they're actually not visualizing what's on the range. They're visualizing what's on the yardage book and seeing that on the range. So that's how they play that event in their mind before they get there. And we've all heard the story about the prisoner of war, right? Who was in solitary confinement, in the way that they stayed sane, they would close their eyes and they would visualize and go into such great detail of the wind and the smell and the texture of the grass. And they'd go through every single shot in the favorite golf courses they've ever played. And then when they would get out, their handicap would drop by like 10 strokes.
Yeah.
So we've all heard that because everything happens twice. And the reason why visualization, your shadow bullpens, is such an important tool used by elite athletes and special operations warriors is that the brain cannot tell the difference between what I vividly imagine and what I physically experience. It's processed with the same, what they call psychoneuromuscular pathways. And in English, what that means is my brain can't tell the difference. So the more I visualize myself executing a skill, it's not Disneyland. It doesn't guarantee I'm going to go do it, but it does increase the chances of me being able to do that because I feel like I'm more confident and I'm more prepared because I've been there in my mind.
It's interesting. So this is like you're hitting on one thing in particular that a friend of the program, again, Scott Fawcett, was Decade, his program. He had done at least a year's worth of analysis just to give you a sense as to how accurate what it is you're saying and how much it impacts the elite players in the world. I think it was like a year-long analysis where he wound up going through every single one of Tiger Woods' swings from the 2000 to 2001 season. And he wasn't looking at the shots. He was simply timing the pre-shot routines. That's all he did, and timed the pre-shot routine, and it came down to within milliseconds every single time. And it's one thing to notice that. It's a completely another thing, and frankly, arguably just as difficult, Brian, is actually practicing that. Go to it, it's not something that you can just like, hey, I want to have a good pre-shot routine. First of all, you got to think about what that pre-shot's going to be. And then you literally have to practice it. And I've tried to do this at the driving range, and I need to commit to it more, but it is hard to do. It's hard to say, I'm going to go walk up, I'm going to do these 3 steps, I'm going to put the club here, and I'm going to waggle twice, I'm going to look at the ball. I mean, you hit it terrible right away because your mind's occupied with the pre-shot routine. But once you get into that habit and you're doing it over and over and over again, you could see how in a very nerve-wracking situation or a tough situation where you're in with nerves and like a lot at stake, going and being just reacting to kind of an existing routine can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback on that, just being around Tiger, watching him. Great point, Kyle. But I think that you wonder, too, how Tiger can go have a practice session and be out there an hour and only hit, 12 or 15 balls. It's one of these things where it takes a bunch of discipline. It's hard to do, which is the underlying factor, and it's simply consistent, as Brian points out. So fascinating stuff, and thanks for digging into that a little bit, Brian. I wanted to, bringing it back to the PGA Tour a little bit as we all approach Augusta here in 2 weeks. If you're a golf fan, you got to be excited about the next major on the docket. Brooks Koepka is a guy that we've talked a lot about on the program. He had a great college career. Florida State was a little unrecognized, and then went out and has become one of the game's elite. What's your take on Brooks, Brian? I know that he loves playing majors, but he gets into a regular event and maybe he doesn't get as fired up. I think nowadays top elite amateur golfers battle that too, especially in light of COVID. How do you find motivation when maybe right in front of you there isn't much?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, right? And I was working with a golfer who's competing on the Korn Ferry Tour, has played on the PGA Tour. And we were talking for the first time ever earlier, this week. And I asked him and I said, hey, what happened when you got to the PGA? Like, was it different for you? And he's like, well, yeah, you're lining up and you see all these guys you've been watching on TV and, maybe you try to do too much. And I said, well, that's part of the problem, right? Is an elite competitor, what an elite competitor needs to lock in and go one shot at a time. They need a club, they need a ball, and they need a target. They don't need it to say Masters. They don't need it to say Major. They don't need it to say anything other than I'm competing with myself and I'm competing with the course. And as an elite competitor, I'm going to give myself the best chance, right? The mistake of when it's a Masters or it's a Major, I'm going to step up. That step up should happen all the time. And the best ones out there, the Clayton Kershaws, the Drew Brees, right? The George St. Pierre's in the UFC, and the athletes I've had a chance to get to know, the difference, I think, at that elite level is like they know their brand is on the line all the time, and how they compete is a reflection of their brand. Not what they say, but how they compete and what they do. And yeah, bright lights, big city. Some guys were going to perform better in those events. Why do they perform better? Because they focus more, and they focus more maybe because it means more, because it's worth more. But ultimately, the guys who make it the most in this game are the ones who can take that focus that they have on their best day and try to bring it every day. That doesn't mean they're going to score the same every day, but if you look at what the controllables are, right? Mental game management, self-management should be a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 every day because it's controllable. Course management and decision-making should be a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 because it's a controllable. My swing that day, some days I feel better than I do. It's such a fluid motion. There's so many things that are happening within a swing. I think that's the hardest part, to show up every single day. Also, as a golfer, don't be so bad that you got to have your A swing for you to score well. If you have your A swing in a BC course management or a BC mental game, you're not going to score well.
Yeah.
So let's at least maximize the things we can control,
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, Brian, we sure appreciate you coming on tonight with Golf U. I wanted to make sure we let all the listeners know where they can find you. It's exciting to see your website, briancain.com, where you've actually put together a free course for both athletes and coaches to check out. I know you're going to be presenting in our National Golf Coaches Association convention here next month, and I'd love for you to just take a second to tell people about where they can find you and what you focus on when you do get together individually with people.
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest place, like you said, is online, briancain.com. And if they go there and click on free courses, I've got a free golf masterclass. It's a 40-minute video that I created to kind of let people learn about the mental game of golf when it's convenient for them. And, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I actually have a house in Payson at a place called Chaparral Pines, which is a great course up there about 90 minutes outside of Phoenix. And, you know, when I work with athletes and golfers one-on-one, we go after building those 10 skills, right? And if you think about golf physical progression in your golf game, you do drills that you get from a coach to develop the skills of whether it's, you know, speed with your putting or distance off a tee or speed or, you know, feel around the green, whatever it is. You do drills to develop those skills to create the skill set of an elite golfer. Well, mental game is a component of that. So what I do is I work to educate the golfers I'm working with on here's the 10 skills: mindset, motivation and commitment, focus and awareness, self-control and discipline, process over outcome, mindset, meditation and mental imagery, routines and habits, time management, organization, and then at the college level, leadership and the right culture. And then I create with them the drills that they need to do to develop those skills to create mental toughness. Because it's not that you're mentally tough or you're not. It's that you're either trained or you're not. And if you're not mentally trained, I'd love to work with you either by going to briancane.com or on Amazon, checking out my book, The Mental Game of Golf, that I co-authored with former Baylor men's golf coach Greg Priest.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Brian, we sure appreciate it. And I get fired up just talking to you. I'm gonna bring you back on the show because I want to go practice myself. It's a lost cause at this stage, but you know, thank you for coming on, sharing some morsels. And you know, we have a lot of golfers out there that are wondering what the 15th club really is, and I think you've defined it here in a couple segments on Golf U. So appreciate you coming on, and hope to have you again. We're going to head to break though, and we're going to do all this on Golf U after this. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome back to Golf U, covering all things college and amateur golf. Coach, always amazing to hear. Brian, we talked about, you know, at break, here we talked about in the conversation with Brian, there's something about having good sports psychology, some good recommendations, good thoughts. He has a bunch of great ideas, but the delivery is so important. It's got to be infectious. You got to buy into it. And man, is Brian able to do that?
Yeah, man. I tell you what, I'm ready to go play right now, Kyle. I mean, the energy that Brian Cain brings is pretty awesome. And kudos to him for letting us see behind the cloak a little bit. You know, I think a lot of the people in the sports psychology space, sports performance space, are a little guarded about kind of what they've really latched onto in terms of their key principles and how they approach, you know, trying to study and get better with their students. And that's one thing I've been impressed with Brian Cain about, is he's very open. And I would encourage everyone that's out there listening to visit his website. If you're interested, check out the free course online, dig a little deeper, because I do think that, you know, we oftentimes talk results every week, Kyle, about the PGA Tour, about college golf, and you know, there's a way that these guys get to those results, and that maybe doesn't get really dug into as you watch a broadcast or you think about why players are able to perform under certain circumstances and not. You know, I promise you that more than half of Brian Gay winning this past week in Bermuda was due to his mental game as much as it was his physical game. And you think about how much time and effort and energy and thought is put into the physical side of golf, and really not you know, digested as just as important the mental side. And so it's fascinating to have a guy that approaches it that way and hear what he's thinking.
Well, kind of got buried, I think, at the beginning of the discussion was this, you know, kind of how he succinctly described the difference between elite players and, you know, really good athletes, but elite athletes, and this concept of consistency. And it wasn't like he didn't talk about technique. He didn't say what makes elite player versus an average player is strength or speed. Now, certainly, like, you have to have these things to be in that kind of in that league. But from a golf perspective, you know, consistency is that key thing. And there is, I think, an applicability to that to just the average everyday golfer. Like, when I go on the golf course and I know my swing can produce good shots. I've seen good shots. And let's say you're a 15 handicapper. You don't maybe have as often good shots as you'd like, but you've hit good shots before. When you don't hit a good shot, the often reaction is, oh, I got to go change my technique. Or what was my technique in a good spot? But in some regards, and in many regards, what Brian is talking about is you need to start getting used to, like, the full routine, both pre and post shot. Like, get into the right frame of mind. Get into the, like, how do I repeat that same motion? I don't need to necessarily change my mechanics. I know I can hit a good shot. I've seen good shots before. Right. How do I maximize the chances that I'm going to do the same thing before? You know, versus, you know, blowing up the swing and blowing technique.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the other thing that underpins a lot of what he says is just hard work. You know, show up for work every day. You know, be consistent. Think about the same things. Focus on the same things. Don't get, you know, in this trap of comparing yourself to the guy that's winning the club championship or the collegiate All-American that's posting every single thing he does on Instagram or a leader cup or leaderboard list. All of those things I think are, in today's day and age of being an elite golfer, difficult things not to do because there's just so much info out there. I mean, think about how much, even preparing for Golf U today, our great producers, prepare us with a whole stat sheet of what went on in the PGA Tour. Someone's digested that, churned it out, so there's stuff that we can talk about. You think about it, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? We didn't, you knew people were winning. You looked at what they shot. You didn't know, how many times in a round, did Jack Nicklaus miss it left of the flag?
Sure,
and
right.
People weren't talking about it, so I think all that stuff is fascinating to me in terms of like really building an elite golfer nowadays and how just being consistent, coming to work, and regressing into your training versus overperforming to win the big event is really a key that Brian Cain was discussing. So
no, it's great.
Well, thanks for checking out that piece on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio on the Golf U spot with Conrad Ray and Kyle Gentry. Again, your next step here is to go to briancane.com/golf and check out my free mental performance masterclass on golf, where I'm going to teach you even more detail about the routines, the mindset, and the habits that you need to compete one shot at a time and give you the best chance for success. Thanks for being with us. Dominate the day.